I'm divorcing you, leave your retirement money behind, and get the hell out of my house. Asian, I'm divorcing you. Leave your retirement money behind and get the hell out of my house.
It was his sudden declaration. Just when I tried to talk to him after a long time, I was showered with heartless words, and in the end he told me to leave the house.
I understand, I replied and left the house maturely.
It's shocking to think that money is more important to him than me, even though we're a married couple. However, I had some sense of what was going on, the misfortunes that will befall to my husband after this. My name is Grace Anderson, 65 years old. I'm an ordinary housewife with a husband and a son. I'm not a full-time housewife. I work quietly as an office clerk for a retail company.
Osman used to say, it's fine if you just stay home.
But I didn't like the idea of being idle and thought about our financial future, so I chose to work as an office clerk. But when I was in my 20s, my beloved parents passed away one after another. Suddenly, I was left all alone and cried in loneliness every day. I had no friends to speak of, and the only time I could interact with others was through work. At the time, I was working as a clerk for a construction company. I had a hectic life, keeping track of the seasonal workers, creating documents, and so on.
Harris, please handle these documents for me. I have a date with my boyfriend later.
Oh, Harris, mine too.
My maiden name is Harris. Among the female employees around me, having a boyfriend or husband was taken for granted. Etchin to that group, I was the only one without a partner, so I was constantly burdened with extra work. I had no plans, so there was no room for refusal. He even lied once and said no, but I ended up feeling guilty afterwards, and I realized again that I am not a good liar. Then one day, while everyone else was leaving on time to go out for drinks or on dates, I was alone, doing the work that was imposed on me and the work that remained. He checked to make sure no one was around and let out a sigh. He confirmed that no one was around and let out a sigh. That's when someone suddenly approached me from behind.
Josie, now. Dude Harris, if it's okay with you, I'd like to help, show. I don't know what I can do, though.
And I turned around and saw Jack Anderson, the man who would later become my husband, looking exhausted.
But Jack, you're labor, aren't you? I don't think paperwork is something you do,
No, I just thought if it wouldn't be too much trouble, I'd like to help. Is it okay?
When I listened to his story, it turned out that he had been worried about me, always working overtime when I returned from the construction site to the company. He told me that until now it had been difficult to talk to me because some other employees were working overtime around me. But today he couldn't see anyone and he ventured to talk to me. I felt really bad that day and declined his offer. However, from that day on, I happened to see Jack more often.
And he would always ask, are you working late today?
At first, I thought he was a strange person. But when we saw each other every day, we naturally became close. Eventually, he started helping me with my work. Jack had worked as a clerk in the past, and he completed the work I asked him to do with great dexterity. As those days continued, and our relationship grew closer, going beyond just colleagues, and we became a couple. Several years passed, and we successfully got married. We even had a son, and I think that was the happiest time in my life. As for my job, I retired after giving birth and focused on raising our child. Just later on, when our son grew up, I started working as an office clerk for a retail company. The salary was lower than my previous job, but it was very comfortable to work there, and it fit well with my responsibilities of taking care of the house, raising our child, and working. My relationship with my husband was good, and we were a close-knit family, I think. However, there was one thing that bothered me. It was my husband's gambling habit. Since we were dating, I often heard him talk about going to horse races or pachinko parlors, whether he won or lost. To be honest, I wished he would quit because I considered it a rather expensive pastime. I was also concerned that he rarely participated in household chores or parenting. But since he was using his own earned money to have fun, and he didn't bother me about it, I didn't particularly try to stop him.
Where have you been today?
Oh, today I went to the casino. Well, I lost. It's frustrating.
I remember having a conversation like that. A few years later, when my son grew up and became a high school student. Huston, still fond of gambling, would always go gambling during his free time or on his days off. At first, I tolerated it, but going during work hours was honestly unbelievable, and I had talked to him about it.
I'll see you before that. Hey, why don't you stop playing casino during a work day? You'll lose money, and what if you suddenly get to work?
Oh, but it's my free time, isn't it? Even if there's sudden work, someone else can handle it, right?
He said such carefree things.
Oh, is it this late already? I'm going out?
Edward too.
I feel like going to the boat races today. Maybe I'll go to the race course. See you.
He said that and went out. From that time on, I think cracks started appearing in our marriage. And a few more years later, my husband reached retirement age before me. However, my plans were shattered in an instant. It was due to one word from my husband. Grace, I don't need dinner tonight. Why? Today is the day you retire, and I was planning to make it special.
And it seemed that there were women involved as well, so...
Being that I didn't readily agree, and had an expression of discontent, he seemed to have guessed various things. However, my husband didn't apologize to me.
Rather, he seemed unable to hide his irritation and said, honestly, being with the family is boring. It's more fun with those guys. It was the first time he had said something like that, and I was speechless.
In the end, we couldn't celebrate his retirement at all, and I felt the gap in our family deepen. After retiring, my husband became even more obsessed with gambling. He would wander around from morning till night. You might wonder how I found out where he was going. It's because he would take out sweets and betting slips from his pockets.
Oh, today I went to the casino today. I went to the racetrack. He would say, making me aware of things I didn't want to know.
By that time, if I had been more assertive in my warnings, things might have been better. By that time, my son was no longer at home, and I was alone in my large house, spending my time in solitude. My son is already independent, but to be honest, our finances are quite tight because all the living expenses at that time were covered by my salary, and it wasn't a very high salary. My husband was playing around with his retirement money, and he was relying entirely on me for living expenses. He also started begging me for money as if he were too lazy to withdraw it from his account. He had been displaying such audacious behavior for a while, but for some reason it increased after his retirement.
Hey, could you think a little more about the household right now? We're living on the money I've earned, so even if you could help out with the housework a bit.
Oh, are you still saying that? You know, it's like,
When I give him a warning, my husband, who's rooted in the fact that I have been paying little attention to him for some time now, immediately dismisses the conversation as if he is sulking. Many times, I found his behavior quite infuriating. Whether he was aware of it or not, my husband continued to immerse himself in gambling as before. Furthermore, he started coming home in a bad mood more often, and the reason was simply because he had lost.
Buck won't show.
don't talk to me.
He says I began to receive sudden outbursts more frequently. I wonder what will happen if we continue to spend time like this. I was anxious. My husband, who had become even more distant since his retirement, he started staying out late more often. An instant scent in the air was that of alcohol. I didn't want to smell that in the morning.
Did you go drinking again?
Shut up, that's my business. You should just shut up and go make some money.
Saying that he would enter the bedroom without even taking a shower. I couldn't remember when the bedroom had become separate. That's how cold our relationship had become. That's when I finished work and returned home. My husband was usually not at home. If he was, he would be inviting someone over for a party, and there would be beer cans and snack wrappers scattered on the floor.
And you've left it like this.
Oh, you're back already. I'm going out for a drink with this guy, so I don't need dinner.
He's saying this, he would leave the house with his guest, leaving me to clean up the mess. I couldn't help but let out a sigh. There was no one left to worry about me anymore. A few months later, my retirement day finally arrived. As a middle-aged housewife, there weren't many companies willing to hire me, but I was grateful to the company that did hire me.
Thank you for everything.
As I said that, I could hear applause from my colleagues, and at the same time, close coworkers gave me flowers and gifts. They were really nice people. Thinking of that, tears started to fall. After leaving the company, I went straight home. It was still daytime, and my husband was unlikely to be home.
I'm home.
Feeling cheerful, I greeted the empty house, and then, oh, welcome back. You're home early today, and someone I didn't expect to be there was in the house. Yes, it was my husband.
Oh, why are you here? It's unusual for you to be here at this hour.
It's my house, so it's normal for me to be here.
Except my husband, who usually only spouted nonsense, suddenly made a valid point, and I was a bit taken aback. But I certainly didn't look down on him. Instead, I wondered if he remembered my retirement day and had come home specifically for that reason. However, those expectations would soon be shattered.
As I stood there in confusion, my husband urged, well, come into the living room.
I entered the living room and placed the bouquet and packages on the table. Today's your retirement day, right? How was it? Everyone congratulated me. I really had a great time working at the company.
I'm not asking about that. I mean, money, your retirement money. How much did you get?
Home money.
Your retirement money. How much did you get?
My husband wasn't interested in congratulating me on my retirement. He wanted me to hand over my retirement money. It's true that we had talked about my retirement a few months ago. He usually gets such conversations so quickly that I thought he had forgotten this time as well. But the thought of remembering all the money involved cooled me off at once.
I've been waiting for you to retire, so that means we're getting divorced. Leave this house as soon as you get the money.
Oh, I see. I'm no longer needed, huh?
That's what I'm saying.
When I confirmed, he angrily shouted, "Understood, but I haven't received the money yet. I'll come to give it to you when I do," he continued.
It was taking so long. What a useless company.
My husband said so and gave me the filled-out divorce papers. He told me to fill them out and that we won't be a couple anymore.
Oh, but please leave soon. We've been living together until today, so you should be grateful.
I thought resisting would be futile, so I signed the divorce papers and quickly packed my belongings before leaving the house. I never expected things to turn out like this all of a sudden, and I wondered how I would live from now on. I was worried about where I would sleep and how I would afford food. Losing my home was truly a difficult situation. Afterwards, having concluded that I could manage hotel living for a while, with my available funds, I searched for a nearby budget hotel and decided to stay there. But the rooms at the budget hotel were surprisingly spacious, and the beds were very comfortable. While thinking that I needed to somehow manage before I ran out of money, I fell asleep that day. 1 month later, I was in Hawaii. Today had been another enjoyable day, and I sat on the sandy beach, gazing at the sunset over the sea. In the midst of this peaceful moment, my smartphone suddenly rang.
Why, who's calling at this time?
It was embarrassing to admit, but I had been enjoying such an elegant time that I felt irritated by the intrusive sound of my ringtone. No, maybe the other party was the problem. I looked at the name on the screen and shoved my phone straight into my pocket. However, the incessant ringing continued, and I eventually answered in frustration.
Yes, hello.
Oh, that's not how you should answer. Where are you? Where are you?
The caller was none other than my husband. I had been in Hawaii for a month, after being kicked out of the house and living in a hotel for a few days. I realized my funds would run out if it continued like that. So I had called my son, who was in Hawaii, and had been living there since he graduated from college and got a job. He met his wife there, and they both decided to move to Hawaii. After leaving their jobs, when I told him about all of my husband's actions and words, including how he told me to leave the house and that I am currently without a home, to my surprise, he said, "Do you want to move in with us?" The sticking point here is the travel expenses to Hawaii. However, I had been lying to my husband. In reality, I had received my retirement bonus when I was kicked out of the house. Since I had been complaining about my husband for some time, the company was flexible and transferred the money to me early, thinking that if I had a retirement payment, I would not have to worry about money if I got divorced. If I gave it to my husband, it would all be dissolved in gambling. With that thought in mind, I had lied in that moment.
Why didn't you give me the retirement bonus and went to Hawaii?
Ha, what do you mean? Well, you're not married anymore?
At that, there was a surprised voice on the other end of the phone.
Huh? We're not married anymore. What are you talking about?
Teacher, I was taken aback by those words. Shouldn't you have filed for divorce? I honestly wondered and asked.
Oh, you wrote the divorce papers. Didn't you submit it?
I didn't submit them, but
According to my husband, the divorce papers were just a threat to make me give him money, and he never actually intended to get divorced. And he was surprised that I had actually listened to him and that was now embarrassed to cancel the divorce. When I brought him my retirement money, he told me all the scenarios he had planned to say. If you have the money, I won't divorce you. I was so taken aback by my husband's strategy that I had no words to say.
hey, didn't I support you? So have some consideration and give me the money.
It is true that when I was focused on childcare, he had supported me, but in the latter part of our marriage, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I was the one supporting him. I was angry at my husband's words and retorted.
You only care about money, don't you? What's the matter now?
My words seemed to strike a nerve with my husband. He started getting angry on the other end of the phone. What's with that attitude? Besides, since you said you'd give me the retirement money, I spent all my savings. What are you going to do about it? Written in our joint account for retirement, there was a substantial amount of money set aside for our future. While I had expected it, my husband had gambled away all that money. Furthermore, he had spent seasonally extravagantly on meals with his gambling buddies and on his extramarital affairs. When he began to run out of money, he finally realized his mistake and started investing in addition to gambling. However, given how much he had lost in gambling, his investments were bound to fail. My husband was almost in tears and asked me several times to help him.
We've been helping each other. Yes, we did it first. But what about recently? All you ever say to me is, lend me money.
I couldn't help raising my voice. My husband seemed quite surprised because he had never seen me like this.
Well, that's how it is.
hey, wait, lend me some money.
Even though I was angry, I decided that I never wanted to see my husband again if all he cared about was money. At the same time, I realized that money was more important to him than our marriage, and I felt sad. Ignoring my husband's loud voice, I hung up the phone and my son, who was beside me, started talking.
It was on the other one. I think I haven't seen you mad in a long time.
Well, you heard that? It was your dad.
As I answered about the person on the phone, my son seemed somewhat satisfied. After that, the phone rang a few times. We had been on the phone for quite a while earlier, and I'm sure the phone bill must have become quite hefty. However, if I answered the call again, it would incur additional charges, and my husband would be digging his own grave. He's thinking about how he didn't even have that knowledge. I couldn't help but wonder why I married that man. But if I had not married that man, I would never have met my son. If up with my persistent husband's calls, I decided to block his number. I don't think there's any problem since I'm still in touch with our son, but I couldn't help but wonder how flustered he would be if he realized he was blocked. Afterward, I returned home temporarily and decided to settle things with my husband properly. I consulted with a lawyer and went to meet my husband with the lawyer to make the divorce official. At first, he adamantly said, "I won't agree to a divorce. You're just bluffing." But even if it was just a bluff, once you start filling out divorce papers, it's considered an intent to divorce. My husband, who didn't know that, seemed to be desperately trying to come up with excuses, but in the end, the divorce was finalized without any of his arguments being accepted. From here on, it's a story I heard from relatives, but it seems my husband was asking everyone for money. At first, our relatives thought something had happened and lent him money, but as my husband's constant demands became more and more unreasonable, they became suspicious and stopped lending him money. Apparently, my husband, who has been abandoned by his relatives, is currently working part-time day jobs to somehow make ends meet. They are getting by on that, but they say it is only a matter of time. Since he hasn't been paying utility bills, gas and water have all been cut off, and it's only a matter of time before he becomes homeless. After the divorce was finalized, I returned to Hawaii and am now living happily with my son and his family. Initially, I was worried about living abroad, but I gradually got used to it, and now I've grown enough to go shopping on my own. I'm shopping on my own. It may not be the retirement life I once envisioned, but I don't mind this lifestyle at all.